we have Sabres assistant GM Jerry Forton in studio with us today, which is incredible because we have a long list of things that we can talk to Jerry with, including the early news of the day, Jerry, and that is the preseason schedule being announced for the Sabres. It's shorter this year.
Yes.
It's a 4-gamer that leads into an 84-game regular season, and it begins on the road on September the 21st. First home game is the 22nd, with Columbus coming in. As someone who has scouting roots and coaching roots, what is it like looking ahead to a condensed, shorter preseason schedule this year?
I have no idea whether this is a popular public opinion or not, but I'm all for the shorter preseason schedule. Strictly as a scout, terrible hockey games to try to scout. So many variables, a tough evaluation. Marty knows, is it even fair to evaluate longtime NHL players playing in those games? Everyone's on a different timeline in terms of getting ready for the regular season. Then you have the young players in there that have a different agenda. It's tough. So I'm all for the shorter preseason.
My concern for somebody in your position was that, because there's only 4 games, maybe some of the players that are, just drafted or have been drafted a couple of years ago that maybe would get a preseason game won't get that opportunity. But I like what you're saying. It's not easy to even scout those guys if they get that opportunity. So I'm all for it. 4 preseason games, even as a goalie. You get a half a game, go right into the season, be done with it. So good. I'm glad that we're on the same page here.
And as you know, Jerry, there's news every day. People are still buzzing on the heels of the season that was and are anxiously awaiting the season to come. Let's look at it quickly from a couple of different perspectives. And one of the talking points, obviously, right now is Alex Tuch and just what it's like in your position within management and in the organization, to deal with a player like Alex and his pending free agency as you try to continue to build this team.
Well, he's obviously had a huge impact on our organization, and that's something on a bigger picture, is Jarmo's responsibility. He'll do what's best for our organization. Alex has meant and continues to mean a lot to our organization. So I have no idea how that's going to unfold in the next few weeks here. I'm trying to spend most of my energy focusing on the draft, but Jarmo's doing everything he can every day to try to make our team better. My job is right now on the draft and our staff, the amateur staff, getting focused for the draft. And there's lots of different ways you can make your team better, and we need to get better in all areas.
When the Kesselring trade happened and the Sabres go from 27th overall to 20th overall, was the phone buzzing with all of your draft, group and that room of saying, now we're shifting our focus to a different area of the draft? Or, you guys know these players so well. Was there a buzz going down to 20? What was that feeling from the draft room?
Well, a few thoughts on that. In the first round, obviously, we pick apart these players for 2 years in some cases. Yeah. So we know the whole group that's available, whether it's at 20 or 27. For me personally, and talking to my amateur staff and conversations with Berge and Jarmo especially, it was a massive move in my mind. And I've heard some of the public narrative, roughly a mid-second round pick is what the tables would tell you the value of that is. And that's probably accurate, but a couple things I would add on that. That's only if you have a trade partner, right? Yeah. So that's the value of the pick if you can get up to 20. But we know from previous years it's almost impossible to do, especially on draft day. So to be able to do that in advance of the draft is a major benefit. We don't have a second or third round pick this year, but I would venture to say if we had our second and our third, that wouldn't have been enough to get up from 27 to 20. So I consider it, high value getting up those 7 spots, and then especially in this draft. And this is what, had to lean on the amateur staff for, but I also related, to Jarmo, and we had numerous conversations about it. I think there's a very good chance at 20 we get one of our players that we have in the 13, 14, 15 range. Mm-hmm. And I think the top 10 or 11 of this draft is almost set in stone. If we were picking 20, I think there's almost no chance we get someone in our 27, pardon me.
Yeah.
We no chance we get someone in our 13, 14, 15, 16 range. And if you just go back and look at our, recent 3, 4, or 5 drafts, I know we got Kulik at 28.
Mm-hmm.
The one year, there was no chance we're getting a Kulik in this draft at 28. I suppose we could get shocked, and we were a little shocked that year. I mean, we tried to move up that draft right after we took Ostlund, because we had Ostlund and Kulik side by side.
Mm-hmm.
In our list. We tried to get up to 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. Overpaying in all those cases and couldn't do it. So to get up from 27 to 20 now, 20 now at this point is massive in my mind. We'll see how the draft falls, and then you look. We got Halanus at 14, we got Benson at 13, we got Ostlund at 16. I think that's the range of players we have a decent likelihood of getting now that I don't think we would have gotten at 27.
And what an impact from all of the names you just mentioned. But when you really think about moving forward, a player you bring in, but you obviously would have had a strong opinion on him when he was drafted by another organization, and that's Josh Doan. And along with Benson, who you just tell me what you saw in both Benson and Doan, and now what you think those two will mean moving forward.
Well, I think it's obvious, and our entire team's level of compete elevated this year, and I think the stretch that they went through, chasing down Tampa Bay and winning the Atlantic Division and prepped them well for playoff hockey, in my opinion. But those two players kind of lead the charge from a compete level. When you combine the compete with the skill level, they have the ability to make plays. The 200-foot game. I mean, I could go through a lot of other players on our lineup and say the same thing, but those two obviously elevated at a high level in the playoffs. And to be able to elevate with both your compete and also your execution level, I think was really impressive. And the whole Doan trade, organizational, wide, I think, every department did a great job on insisting that he was a piece of that deal. And sure, he's probably even been better than we expected and got there quicker. I think we had hoped the player would be this player, but to say that he would have gotten there this year was, a pleasant surprise for all of us.
When you scout and when you talk to these prospects and you get in the room, do you put the coaching hat on sometimes? Because you've had some coaching experience, right? From college and, to higher levels of hockey. So do you put that coaching hat on, or is it reserved on the side, like you have the scouting hat, or can both be the same type of hats?
Well, I think coaching background for sure helps you in your scouting background, and
we're showing your resume on the screen right now, but you're looking from 96 on: Niagara University, UMass Lowell, Harvard, Buffalo Sabres. That is a lot of experience.
6 different Sabre hats he's worn. I love it.
Assistant coach, amateur scout, assistant director of scouting, director of collegiate scouting, director of amateur scouting, and assistant general manager. That's a lot of different business cards.
Yeah, and I think all the different areas help you, in corresponding areas. And the thing that helps you the most is making mistakes, right? I mean, and
learning from those.
Especially in college, when you scouted and coached, you lived, good and bad with your own picks.
Yeah.
So you had to try to make it work, obviously, and not so much in this day and age because kids are coming and going. But back then, you typically had a kid for 4 years when you scout. From the coaching perspective, it definitely helps. The danger you can run into is you don't want to get caught up too much in the player right now. Mm-hmm. And when you're coaching, that's more of your job. What's the player doing for you right now? And when you're scouting, you have to understand the warts and the development path, and maybe you're 4, 5, 6 years away from the player you want him to be. But what are the attributes you're seeing that will allow him to get there? But it obviously helps, and we have a lot of scouts on our staff that have pretty extensive coaching experience too.
Yeah. Well, it'll be much easier to answer this after the weekend is done. But as you approach the draft, do you feel a different sense and strategy under Jarmo as you head into this?
Well, I think the one thing that's been very helpful with Jarmo is he lived this from our end, right? Mm-hmm. Like he pounded the pavement. He's extensive experience as a scout, and similar probably to me, but at a higher level. He did it in a lot of different roles in different organizations. Having said that, he is very clear all the time. He doesn't want to interfere with our process at all. And the mistakes he has made over the years is when he interferes with the scouts who know the players the best. So he's been very careful not to do that, even when he joined us last year. But some of the global perspective he can give us and some of the lessons he's learned over the years is extremely helpful.
Yeah, and obviously the communication is something that's important. And to talk about coaching or scouting or anything, communicating is good. What about when you were playing? Did you have the same kind of communication lines with the coaches that you had or some of the people that recruited you? We got this picture, and producer Sam's going to bring it up, of you playing at UB.
Oh,
amazing.
wow.
And we can't see, like, this is you next to the goalie. I love that you were, like, taking care
We
of your
couldn't
goalies.
find one in color? Seriously?
But look at your skates. You
No.
have a white blade and a black blade.
Those are
What
the
hap-
old tuck blades,
Yeah,
right?
but what happened with two different colors? Did everybody have two different colors blade?
You want to know what's funny? I went into the Hall of Fame at UB, but probably more as a soccer player than a hockey player. But the picture they put up in there is that picture. So the amount of times I get asked about that, or, someone will be out in Alumni Arena and they pull up the picture and I'm like, oh, please. First of all, I wasn't a very good player, so I didn't have to worry about the coaches talking to me too much.
Okay,
back
so
then.
communication was good.
Yeah, so I had a great college coach my last year and a half, where I respect the hell out of a guy named Ed Wright, who was the first black college hockey coach in Division II hockey.
Wow.
Division I or Division II. Went to Boston University with Jack Parker, Herb Wakabayashi, who was probably one of the best players at college hockey at the time. And scouted for Anaheim, won a Stanley Cup as a scout for Anaheim. A tremendous human being, and he would ask me about that sometimes too. I don't know, the budgets weren't quite what they were back then, I guess.
How do we get UB hockey back?
It show you the impact they had on both programs. They dropped the hockey program and the soccer program.
Oh, no.
And I coached the soccer team there for 6 years as well. So.
All right, it's clearly
Yeah,
not
yeah.
your direct result of you, but we do love the fact that you were two sports, and it's World Cup time, and you have a soccer background, and we're talking about just athletics in general and player evaluation. Like, what is it like for you when you watch a World Cup and you just tie in your sports knowledge when watching these players at the highest level?
Well, I'm out of that realm these days, but I have been watching a lot of it. And the only thing I would say is, I just came back from Florida with the Russian combine down there, and talking to some of those players. The one thing we encourage all these players to do is to play multiple sports. Yeah. And too many of them stop playing at 12, 13 years old. They should. And even if it's not on a formal basis, this is all athletes. You have, and I'm sure our exercise science people would tell you the same thing. You're doing nothing but helping yourself in your hockey development by playing other sports. But the World Cup being in our country is amazing. I mean, it wasn't the World Cup, but I had a chance when I was very young to go up to Toronto and actually play like an exhibition match and meet Pelé. Afterwards, and the impact that had on me as a young athlete was amazing. And that was, Toronto's always been a mecca for soccer. I don't know if people know this. Rochester, New York, was was always one of the best places.
Yeah. I remember going to the Rhinos game when they were in the A-League before MLS soccer, and it was there at ESL Park now, but it used to be called Frontier Field, and they used to have we would go when I was with the Rochester Americans. It was incredible. It was so much fun. But you were a goalie in soccer?
I was a goalie in soccer.
Like, I cannot get around that. Like, I felt like a goalie in hockey, maybe a goalie in soccer, but you weren't a goalie in hockey, but you were a goalie in soccer.
Yeah.
What was that? Because I was terrible as a soccer goalie. I couldn't do it. It's too big. The angles were wrong. How was that being a goalie in soccer for you?
I was thrown in there at a very young age because I was always playing like 2, 3, 4 years up with older kids. So I just got thrown in there. Quite honestly, I hated it. I wish I was a field player. I wish the rules were like they were now, where the goalies actually are using their feet a lot more now and a lot more involved in the game. But I got, you two probably know have a lot of hyperactivity in me, so being a goalie in soccer was not enough action. I liked indoor soccer a lot better.
Of course.
Oh, yeah.
Lot more activity for the goalie.
I'm the same way with lacrosse. Like, I prefer the indoor game. It's just it's tighter. Obviously, it resembles hockey in a way because of the confines, but yeah, it's action-packed. Now,
How the heck did we get to this point? Weren't we talking about
no,
the draft?
this is good.
No,
This is all like leading to, what's going to happen this weekend, but just thought process. Like, it's just so nice to have conversation that's not, kind of familiar. Like, sometimes I feel like we talk about the same things every draft, right?
Yeah.
And so you wanna dive in a little deeper and pursue different angles as to what makes you think the way you do when you're looking at athletes. And I look at your background here and just wonder like how it all kind of ties in with the growth of your positions within the organization and also the number of different people that you've worked with in this organization to get to today. Because we briefly touched on how you viewed Jarmo and his draft approach right now, but like what else have you taken from this more than a decade now with the Sabres?
Well, one thing I've taken for sure, and I mentioned this to Jarmo, and it really was reinforced in my mind when I heard Lindy talk about the continuity of his coaching staff. I think the continuity of our amateur scouting staff, especially the past 5 years, has been massive. And some of those people that are extremely valuable in our organization that, do the really hard work have been here longer than that. But for the most part, as an amateur staff, we've worked together, especially the past 4 drafts, I would say. And I think we have a lot of work in a lot of areas that we can improve in still, but I think we're getting a lot better. Especially as we approach some of the mid-round picks in the last couple of drafts. I think a lot of that has to do with continuity and knowing each other's strengths and weaknesses. That's really important.
But, I mean, people think if you're in hockey, people that are in hockey, that's because they played or they played at a high level, they know the game. And I say everybody comes from different backgrounds. Like we just watched Carolina winning the Stanley Cup, Eric Tulsky. Like it's a different background. There is a lot of different, John Chayka getting hired as the GM of the Toronto Maple Leafs and whatnot. You have a law degree from UB. So our kind of thinking was also with, a loss that we suffered in the organization and the alumni and Jerry Meehan. And I'm like, I wonder, did you have any interaction with Jerry Meehan at UB? Because that's where he was teaching and the law aspect of it. And just the law degree, how do you use that into some of the positions and some of the things that you do within the organization?
Well, it's really thinking analytically, I think, and, being able to listen to and understand other people's opinions and understand you're going to be wrong just as much as anyone else, but you have to...
Do you sometimes just say, I object, Your Honor, and then you're like, oh, wait, I'm not in a courtroom right now. It's not like it used to be.
Another thing, I wasn't really fond of being in the courtroom, but put that right up there with being a soccer goalie. Yeah. I will tell you, though, like the Appellate Division Court of Appeals, which I went in front of a couple of times, the pressure in that environment's pretty good, too,
Boy.
Especially if you have a client sitting right next to you watching you, But that wasn't my forte by any means. But, our analytics staff is a massive part of our draft process and our pro process right now. They don't have, extensive backgrounds in hockey. We have various scouts on our staff that played in the NHL. We have various scouts on our staff that never played hockey at a high level. Every one of them brings something just as valuable as the others. I really do believe, we all take our turns being wrong, and the important thing is as a group that you protect each other and you get to an end point where you're eliminating the mistakes. That's first and foremost my job, I view. Like whether it's my mistake or someone else's opinion or analysis in our organization, let's try to eliminate the mistakes and then do the best, with the next group of players on getting to a point where we get the best player. The players make you look good and bad sometimes, too. Let's face it. When you're drafting them at 17 years old, a lot of these players we talked about have made us look really good because they put the work in. Our development staff has put the work in. I think almost everything's gone right with our development staff and our coaching to get these players that we've talked about get to where they are. But then the players have done the work.
Do you have a favorite draft pick?
No, I don't.
Really?
I don't think so. No, there's, it's the ones you miss
If he
on
had
that.
drafted me, he would have said
So do you
me,
have
but
ones that you
yes.
missed on?
Yeah, that burns you. That really burns you. The players I can think. I'm not going to mention them, but I can think of 2 picks that I would purely take responsibility for missing on in the 2nd or 3rd round
Oh, wow.
the past few years, where we probably overthought it a little bit, or I focused on the wrong piece of information. And I'm still happy with the players we got there instead, but I know where those 2 mistakes were, and in a sense, it set us back. It's 2 pieces we could really use right now. But I think for every 2, we've made a couple other really good picks too.
Now, when you see like a class that we'll talk about, later in the show, the Hall of Fame, and a guy like Patrice Bergeron, name comes out, and everybody's got their draft stories, right? They either met with Bergeron or they had that discussion about him. And I'm kind of intrigued to know, like, did you, in your time scouting, did you come across a player like Patrice Bergeron that you're like, oh, this is going to be the next one? Or even him, like when it was the time of his draft and players in and around him, do you recall some of those things when you see players retiring or getting into the Hall of Fame?
Driving down here today, I was just talking to our assistant director, Jason Nightingale, and the topic we were talking about is going into the draft. How can you identify the players that are truly going to adjust, going up levels, and truly do what they have to do to be the best player they can be? And in a lot of cases, that means sacrificing, right?
Yes.
So in Bergeron's case, he sacrificed offense in his career for sure. Points, probably contract dollars. How do you find that guy? Really hard to do. What is our process for trying to find that guy? Very imperfect. But that's a lesson for us all the time. Defensemen that are willing to just be good partners and shut down defense. Look at Sammy, the impact he's made on an organization. You see the offense came this year, and he probably could have been more offensive earlier in his career. And, that might disappear, it might not disappear, but what you've always had is a perfect partner for others. How do you find a guy in the draft that's willing to do that, especially in their first 2, 3, 4 years of pro hockey, where everyone's talking about the next contract, and they're judging the next contract on numbers and production. So when we truly find that part of the formula, then we're really off and running. But we're trying all the time with that.
Do you have better numbers, though, now that help you in that regard ahead of time? The non-traditional numbers, if you will?
I think, we go back and forth with the analytics department all the time on trying to identify those type of players, but also having the requisite skill level you need to play in the NHL. So if you just try to identify a player at a lower level that's going to be a role player in that type of role, and he gets to the NHL and he doesn't have the skill set to do everything else at least a basic level, it's not going to work, right? So they've done a great job on adjusting, I think, their lower lineup forwards and defensive type D-men to help us identify those. And scouts probably naturally gravitate toward those type of players anyways, but then we'll miss a lot of times because the player doesn't hit the minimum threshold they need to get to the NHL level. So you find both, you're in great shape. Then you got a Bergeron.
But how do you measure? Like Bergeron was in the league at 18. Then there was a lockout. He went back, I think, at 19, played in Providence, came back up. Zach Benson making the NHL at 18. So how do you measure? How quick will they get there to, what's the, ultimate best that player can get you? Because getting an 18, 19, 20-year-old to play in the NHL could be very beneficial for the organization.
As an amateur staff, we should never be worried about how quickly they get there.
Okay.
I mean, maybe if you're picking in the top 2 or 3 of the draft, you have that conversation, the top 5, let's say. But you make mistakes if you start getting concerned about that, because a huge part of our equation many times is a late developer the athletic upside of a player, what's still to come. Those are the diamonds that you find sometimes in the rough, right? The kid that has always been the biggest, fastest, strongest, maybe even the most talented. Sometimes those players struggle to adapt as they go up levels because they've never had to adjust before. They were always just better, faster, stronger. If you would ask and surveyed our amateur staff, I would guess 90% of us would have bet against and maybe not even wanted Benson to be in the NHL his first year from a development perspective. Now the kids, probably proved everyone
special
that it was the right decision. It didn't stifle his development. There's still more to come. I think he showed that this year. But that was a surprise to us, I'll tell you, that he was ready to play in the NHL right after his draft. And certainly not why we drafted him. We all loved him and had him much higher on our list than where we got him, but we didn't think it was because he was going to get there quick.
Who did we have that said, was it Sam Cosentino? That was like, he was one of those that I had a lot higher? Or is that Scott Wheeler? Maybe one of the two.
Who, Benson?
Benson.
Oh,
He's
yeah,
like,
no, there've been a lot
there's
of
a couple of them
Bensons.
that really loved him,
Yeah.
and they're like, we had him a lot higher.
But
in the
Sammy
Sabres.
came on and said, I couldn't stand Braden Holtby. Never thought he was going to make it. And he goes,
I'm not afraid to say this here because, it's his size, right? And with Benson, and he doesn't have any pure separation speed.
Yeah.
Now, I watched, in the playoffs, he actually was, carrying the puck and his ability to transport it and at pretty good speed, he's taken a step in that area. He'll continue to get faster. Yeah. And he didn't have an outside shot threat in junior hockey at all with all the points he put up, and probably still doesn't have much one, but that's got him better too.
Yeah.
So those were areas where we looked at, well, if he can improve those areas, and he's got the hockey sense and compete and puck skills and, in spades, look out. But it's going to take time, and he's just done it quicker than we thought.
well, you've asked so many questions while giving us great answers here, and you're trying to look at a player and say, how can he be that player? How much of it is environment that they ultimately come into that allows them to be like Bergeron, but Bergeron, a Hall of Famer.
Like the connection
but
there.
the Bruins at that time, it was Chara, right? And it's been Chara for like a decade and a half, and the impact that he had on that organization. How much of it do you see? And again, that's beyond your control as a manager, as a scout.
It is, but that's where I said I do think our development staff, 2 different staffs in Rochester, coaching at the NHL level, has made a massive difference. But there does come a time where you might have too many prospects, and our guy's going to get enough opportunity. Now, what you're talking about, needing that opportunity in the proper environment, I think is a huge part of the equation. I think when you're talking about the really special players, if you're talking about a Bergeron or maybe some of our players, that we've taken in the first round that have the ability to take another step and really be special players in the league, they're not there yet. I think those guys are going to find a way no matter what. Mm-hmm. I just think they're wired a certain way. I think they're going to do it no matter what. Could it slow it down, the process, speed up the process? For sure. But these really special players are going to get there.
What is your, just to put it in a Mount Rushmore Hall of Fame style, what is your Hall of Fame of scouting? Like, give me the 4 players that you scouted, you interviewed, and you're like, those are my Hall of Fame of scouting.
Well, we got a bunch of them on our team or close to being on our team right now. I mean, we're obviously, very happy with all those players. Ostlund, Helleners, Benson, I think Kulik, people do or don't talk about him, and he'll be back, and I'm convinced better than ever. But then there's also the, Kozak stories of the world, which is great as a 7th round pick. Some free agent signings over the years. Yeah. Guys, we had a couple great college free agents come through here, and Evan Rodriguez and Chad Ruhwedel that, both went on to win Stanley Cups and long careers. And I actually recruited Chad Ruhwedel to UMass Lowell. Chad did not have one scholarship offer besides UMass Lowell in college hockey.
Wow. Well,
Yeah,
that's good.
so it's but there's I couldn't pick between them. There's so I tell you what, the first
We'll
overall.
switch the question.
But you
then.
appreciate mentors. If there was a Hall of Fame for hockey scouting, who would be the first
Yes.
inducted?
We'll change the question.
Hall of Fame for scouting.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm going to, this is not at the NHL level, but I'll give a little shout out to the first guy that hired me as a college assistant coach, a guy named Blaze McDonald,
Yeah, Blaze.
who won a national championship as an assistant coach at BU, was at Princeton, was at UMass Lowell, coached a couple different places at the Division I level.
Got Niagara into the
Got-
tournament, right?
Got us into the tournament our
Yep.
4th year. We finished number 3 in the nation that year. I mean, we were still playing games in outdoor rinks that season when we got up to 3 in the country. One game away. Should have been North Dakota that year when they won it all in the second round of the NCAA tournament. But Blaze was a big influence on me, actually. I mean, he pounded the pavement as an assistant coach, making nothing in college hockey.
Yep.
And here I was, an attorney that was kind of walking away from my law practice at the time, and making $3,000 coaching, Division I hockey. But he gave me the chance, and he was good to me over the years. And then, I got a chance to later on work with some great people, and Teddy Donato and Sean McEachran and other people like Greg Brown, I think the world of. Dave
Theodore.
Quinn.
The
Donato.
Browns are great.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen that Teddy Donato on The Price is Right?
I have.
Theodore. Theodore.
have.
Go Google that. It's pretty good.
You know what? Those guys, some of the NHL players I got to coach with at the college level, and then to come here and coach with Joe Sacco and Teppo Numminen, they taught me so much. That was sort of the missing piece in what I needed in terms of a scouting coaching perspective. When I got to interact, I coached on some USA teams with some great guys that have gone on to be head coaches in the NHL. And those experiences taught me so much from a scouting perspective.
Jerry, thank you for today. There's so much that goes into this, and you gave us greater perspective on all of it. Good luck this weekend.
I appreciate it.